So what I'll do now is I'll go into what actually makes up your SEO rankings and help you to understand how Google ranks sites, so that you've got some understanding of why it is that you show up or don't show up for the keywords that you're targeting. So prior to 2012, so this is kind of like, so prior to 2012, SEO could be thought of in a fairly simple pyramid where if you had a decent structure at the bottom, so a nice solid foundation where your site was technically correct, and you picked some good keywords and you targeted those keywords well, and then you built some links to your site from other sites on the web, that would pretty much get you ranked. And this is still the core of what goes into your ranking, but there's a lot more to it than that. So with the rise of the social web, the sort of the icing on the cake, if you like, is on-site engagement with your users using social media, and then actually using social platforms like Facebook, Google+, Twitter to actually reach out and engage with your users as well. Prior to 2012, though, this was really all we had to think about. So just digging into that a little bit more, the first thing was having a solid site architecture. And in general, what this meant was a flat architecture. So you would have a home page, and then usually some category pages below that, and then typically product pages below that. Or if you had particularly complex categories or lots and lots of products, you might have subcategories in the middle there. But a flat site architecture for an e-commerce site like yours would typically only be 3 levels deep, which is pretty much what you've got. In addition, we need to make sure that your site is behaving technically correctly. It's returning the right codes back to Google when they make a request. So the important ones here are the OK code, which is a 200 code that your server gives back as a response when Google comes and collects a page. Similarly, if you've moved a page, then you would give back a 301 permanent redirect if that's a permanent move. That's the one that you want to use because that one passes the SEO juice, if you like. The value of the page, of the old page, passes the value of the old page to the new page. There's another type of redirect you can use, which is a temporary redirect, and you're currently using one of those on your site, and that's only temporary, so it doesn't pass any SEO value to the other page. The other one which is important is a 404 not found page. It's important that if the page is actually gone, that you're giving back to Google the correct signal to say, no, this page actually doesn't exist anymore, or this page can't be found. Finally, and this is also quite important, you need to prevent Google from seeing duplicate copies of your page on your site, and this process is referred to as canonicalization, and it just means that you'll have a single canonical version of a page that is the one that you want Google to index, and any other copies of the page which might be reached through a different name of the page. And the classic example here is on your site. If you go to http://dreamdiva.com.au, that's the same page as www.dreamdiva.com.au, and so what you want to do is canonicalize those copies and make sure that Google only sees one of them, and you do that with a combination of redirects, and hopefully a 301 permanent redirect, and some other special tags called canonical tags that you can include in your page content. So we'll talk about that in more detail as we get into your site. But that gets you a firm foundation. The next step is to put on that firm foundation some well-targeted pages. So that's where you need to choose the keyword that you're going to target for your page. So it might be plus size women's jeans, and then you want to make sure that that keyword appears in appropriate places on the page. For example, in the page name itself, so dreamdiva.com.au/plus size women's jeans, as well as in the page title, in the description of the page, and in the text on the page itself. So that's your keyword targeting. Probably the most difficult to understand concept of your rankings is the bit that you can't control on your own site, and that is getting links to your site from other sites on the web. And there's two real concepts that come into this. One is trust, and one is authority. So what Google's really looking for there is for you to get links from other trustworthy sites. So that might be, for example, a news site or an established site that is trusted by Google. Say in your industry, the Vogue forum, for example. But getting links from trusted sites, as well as links which have authority. So sites that have themselves got a lot of links to them are authoritative sites, and they're able to pass on some of that authority to you. You can sort of think of it as the difference between getting an endorsement from just a random person in your neighborhood versus getting, say, a celebrity endorsement. So a celebrity endorsement typically will carry more weight. And it's the same sort of thing in the web. Basically, Google measures the types of links that you're getting to your site, and they're looking for you to get links from relevant and authoritative sites that are basically saying, hey, your site is a good site for plus size women's clothing. Now, that's traditional SEO, and one of the things that's changed actually quite recently, only in August of this year, is Google released a brand new core search algorithm. Now, Google's always making changes to the algorithm, but this was the first change to the core algorithm that they've made in 15 years. So this is a big change. And what they're moving towards is being able to understand the intent behind the search. So they're referring to it as conversational search or semantic search. And what they're really looking to do is figure out what you intend based on the search query, all the words in the query and what they mean taken together, as well as your search history and where you are. Google knows a lot about you. And so that's different from simply word matching. So an example that I've given there is if you search for Botox injection, Google might now match that to anti-wrinkle treatment as your intent. So you can see there that none of the words you searched for are actually in the intent of the query that Google works out. This is a made-up example. That's not an actual example, but that's the concept that Google Hummingbird works on. So what this really means is that it's important for you to have relationships within your market. So Google's looking at social signals, as well as those all-important links from other relevant sites, because all of those are giving Google the signal that you are an authoritative site on the subject of plus-size women's clothing, and that's what you really want to be, because then any search with an intent that matches to that concept of plus-size women's clothing, you're more likely to rank for that. So the way you get that is by actually being the authoritative site, and things that you can do there are things like provide frequently asked questions, create good content in that space. So typically have a blog that is also on the site. So it's actually not on a different domain, it's on the same domain. And you really want to actually be the voice in your market, speaking to your clients, because that's what Google's looking for. One of the other things that can help you with this is structured data, which is basically a way of helping Google to understand the elements that are on your web page. So in your market, it would be things like a product. So rather than just having a string of text, which you and I know when we look at it, oh, that's a product name, but in Google's mind, it's just a string of text. You can actually mark that string of text up and say, oh, this string of text is a product, and this is the name, and this is the price, and this is how many people have reviewed it. So we'll dig into this in a little more detail in a moment. Now, in addition to those factors, Google has also introduced the concept of authorship. So one of the things that Google wants to be able to do is to tie the content on your site back to an actual author, a real person. And they've actually been issued one of the strongest statements that they've made in terms of telling you how important this is. The chairman of Google actually said that the true cost of remaining anonymous might be irrelevance, which is about as close as they ever come to saying if you don't do this, you won't show up. Now you can see here what that looks like when you've actually got authorship established. Your pages show up with your photo next to the results. And this certainly helps with your brand. So people recognize you and say, oh yes, I know Dave, and so I know Dave's the SEO guy, and they click on that result in the search engine, so you stand out in the search engines. In addition to this, structured data, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, authorship is really just a type of structured data telling us about the person. Structured data is telling us about the other things on your site. So you might mark up an address to say, oh, this is the actual address of the company, which can then help Google to match it to somebody's location, so that they know if somebody's close by and they're looking for plus size clothing, then you will actually get a boost in your rankings because Google says, oh, you are the closest result, so that can help. The example here is products. So if you mark up your products, they can actually show up in the search results. You can see there with the star rating, how many people have reviewed it, the actual price of the product. So Google actually shows the data a bit differently in the search engine results, and because it stands out, it can attract more clicks. Now Google is also, they're well aware, of course, that when people know that links are important, that some people will go out and get links from anywhere, quite aggressively, and so Google has put a filter in place, and this particular filter is called Penguin. And Penguin is basically looking at the links to your site and working out whether or not they have been created for SEO purposes basically by you, or are they given to you editorially from other sites legitimately linking to you. Now it's a call that Google makes based on a lot of patterns and sort of pattern matching, and you'll see in a minute, because you have got some fairly aggressive SEO on your site, you'll see when you look at it, it's actually fairly obvious when you've tried to game your links to rank for particular search terms. And Google's Penguin filter will actually prevent a lot of those links from helping you, and in extreme cases can actually lead to you being penalized for having tried to game the search engine. And a penalty with Google will basically mean that it'll push you down in all of your rankings. So Penguin is the links filter. The other thing that Google's interested in is making sure that the sites that they send people to are quality sites. So they look at things like, do you have a privacy policy? Do you have a terms of use? Do you have a sitemap for the users? Is your content unique? Have you got a site that's got reasonable amount of text on it, or is it just all covered in ads? All those sorts of things. So they want to make sure they're sending users to a good quality site, and also one where the user experience will be good. So they look at things like the performance of the site. Is it fast? Do people tend to stay on the site and look around, or do they come back to Google looking for a different answer? So those are the sorts of things that Google is measuring, and they fall under the site quality filter called Panda. So if you've got a site which is generally not friendly for users, then Panda will tend to damp down your rankings, and so you won't rank as highly as if you had a high quality site. So those are all the factors that go into your rankings. Now there's a lot there. The other one that's important to know about is a penalty. I did mention that there are some things that you can do which can actually end up with you getting a penalty, usually for links, but it can also be for site content. Now, penalty is generally a manual action that's taken by Google's web spam team, and that will basically drop all of your rankings either by an amount or completely out of the index. We certainly don't want to have any penalties on your site. We check for this. You don't have any, so don't panic. But it is something that goes into your rankings, so worth being aware of. So there's a lot there, and the way that we think of them is, we try and simplify that back down again and say, look, really it's about having a healthy site. So all the blue stuff, you want to make sure you've got a nice healthy site, no penalties, decent foundation, and user experience is good. You need to do your on-page targeting still. You need to make sure that you've got pages which actually can rank for the keywords that you're going after. So if you've got a page that you're trying to target for plus size women's jeans, it's important that keyword is going to, or that phrase is going to appear somewhere on the page. And there's a couple of important places where it can really help if the keyword appears there. And then finally, you've got to make sure that your off-page links are healthy, that you're getting links from relevant authoritative sites in your market space, that are helping you to rank for the keywords that you're going after. Just as an aside, when we look at links, internal links between your pages are also important. So it's important to have a site, and this really goes into the site architecture, but it is important to have a site where the links between your pages make sense as well, and you can certainly help your ranking just with your internal linking. So those are all the factors, and what we do is we actually go through and we run an audit on your site. We check all of those factors and we give you a score, and this is your SEO ranking report card right now.